Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm really thrilled you're here today because we're going to unpack a shift in modern global security that is honestly almost cinematic in its scale. We're diving into a strategic analysis that totally challenges everything we thought we knew about conflict in the modern age. I mean, forget the traditional battlefields of the past. As you'll see, the reality of warfare today is way larger, incredibly invisible, and just infinitely more complex.
Right, so let's kick this off with a metaphor drawn straight from the ancient wisdom of Sun Tzu. Think about water. Water doesn't have a constant shape, right? It totally adapts to whatever terrain it flows through. Well, warfare is exactly the same. It fundamentally changes according to its environment. The source text we're looking at today makes this fascinating comparison. Directing warfare is basically like a physician treating a patient. You can't just look at the obvious symptoms. You have to look at the whole system, the entire environment. And adapting like that is absolutely crucial right now because our environment of conflict has just undergone a massive, shocking transformation.
To really grasp this transformation, we have to rewind a bit to what the text calls a massive technological shock. I'm talking about the Gulf War. This was a US-led display of completely unprecedented military tech. We're talking stealth aircraft literally dodging radar, satellites pulling the strings from space, precision-guided weapons hitting their exact targets, and these huge information networks connecting the whole shebang. It was like a typhoon sweeping across the Pacific, hitting military establishments all over the globe. Practically overnight, high technology became the ultimate global standard for what a modern military was supposed to be.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. How this technological shock was actually interpreted, specifically by the United States. The source points to former U.S. Defense Secretary William Perry, who is often called the father of stealth. When he was asked about the great theoretical breakthroughs in the military revolution, his answer was super simple: stealth and information technology. This birthed the mainstream view, the American interpretation, which basically said that a military revolution is literally just a technology revolution. The thought was, hey, if you master stealth, information, and precision, you've mastered modern warfare. And, as the text notes, when the Americans catch a cold, the rest of the world sneezes. So this tech-first mindset spread like wildfire globally.
But hang on a second. We really need to pause here and ask ourselves a critical question. Was technology actually the complete revolution? Or was it kind of just shiny packaging on a much deeper, more complex reality? The strategic analysis we are unpacking today argues that viewing warfare only through the lens of technology is a massive misunderstanding. It's an illusion that has basically swept the globe, and we need to clear away that fog to see what modern conflict actually is.
The answer really exposes exactly what everyone missed: the fundamental difference between the machine and the human mind. Look, technology, no matter how advanced it gets, merely creates tools. It allows a soldier to see what's behind a mountain, which is awesome, but it's still just a tool. True transformation, the kind that literally alters the destiny of nations, happens in the human mind. The source text emphasizes that if we just equate a tech revolution with a military revolution, we're stuck on a pretty mundane level. We're entirely missing the deeper dimension of strategic thought.
So going from just having a new tool to a full transformation is actually a multi-stage process. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Technology is undeniably the cornerstone. That's step one. But inventing new tools forces step two, a total change in organization and system formulation. And then, the ultimate maturation, the final completion of this revolution, requires progressing to step three, a total revolution in military thought itself. This means coming up with entirely new forms and methods of fighting. We're currently moving out of that first stage of just obsessing over gadgets and shifting into this deeper, ideological stage where the very definition of how we fight is being rewritten.
Because our thinking is evolving, what we are actually defending has to evolve too. The whole concept of security has undergone this massive before and after shift. Old security? That was strictly regional. It was all about defending physical borders, keeping a standing army, protecting territory from a traditional invasion. But new security? It is vastly expanded. Traditional territorial disputes are now deeply tangled up with grabbing resources, contending for markets, controlling capital, and securing information networks. The text calls these secondary or analogous wars. And let me tell you, they can threaten a nation without looking anything like a traditional military attack.
And since the battlefield has completely changed, the combatants have changed right along with it. The text impartially lays out this incredibly diverse new cast of participants.
We aren't just looking at sovereign states squaring off anymore, no way. We're looking at cyber actors deploying computer viruses and network attacks. We've got financial actors manipulating massive flows of money and using financial derivatives basically as weapons. And we're seeing non-state organizations and extremist groups leveraging media systems and terrorist tactics. These actors are using non-military weapons to force national compliance, and their capacity to cause destruction is absolutely on par with the traditional army.
Now, you might be wondering, can a non-military attack really be as devastating as a physical one? Well, consider this striking historical comparison from the text. Take Iraq, a nation that saw a massive drop in its national security index because of traditional military attacks combined with economic boycotts. Okay, now compare that to Thailand and Indonesia during the late 90s financial crisis. They faced currency devaluations of tens of percent, pushing their economies right to the brink of bankruptcy. The analysis argues that if you look at the sheer devastation and the drop in national security, there really wasn't much difference between the two. Financial attacks can gut a nation just as severely as bombs can.
So this reality forces modern nations to completely throw out that old single-pillar view of defense. You simply can't just look at military strength anymore. You have to expand your radar and create what's called an extended domain map. This means simultaneously tracking threats across all these interconnected domains: political and cultural stability, economic and material resources, traditional military defense, information networks, environmental geography, and even outer space. A vulnerability in literally any single one of these is a vulnerability to the entire nation.
Okay, so how do you actually manage all of that? The source text calls the solution grand strategy. It's just not enough to have a military strategy anymore. Grand strategy means taking all those factors we just talked about, politics, economics, culture, the military, and superimposing them into one complete massive strategic situation map. Because think about it, how could you possibly use traditional military force to resolve a regional financial crisis? You can't. A single military sword is totally useless against a network hacker or a currency crash. As the author says, one log cannot prop up a tottering building.
Which brings us to the ultimate endgame proposed here, the grand warfare method. This is where nations integrate all their capabilities into one unified composite force. It combines every single dimension, military and non-military, into a completely new kind of operation. The text actually invokes this ancient Taoist principle here. The way produced the one produced the two produced the three, and the three produced the 10,000 things. By blending these incredibly diverse, non-military strategies with traditional tactics, the ways you can fight become nearly infinite. It fundamentally rewrites what it means to go to war.
And that leaves us with this final, really striking thought. The battlefield expands when every form of power becomes connected. Warfare is no longer confined to physical borders or troops in uniform. It's literally everywhere. It's in our financial markets, our computer networks, our media, and our environment. The age of purely technological warfare is already in the rearview mirror. We have officially entered the age of grand warfare. So the real question you should take away from this explainer is, considering just how intricately connected our world is today, is any nation out there truly prepared to defend itself on a battlefield that has absolutely no boundaries? Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.